Welcome back. Who writes this stuff? On Thursday, a North Korean official calls Vice President Mike Pence a political dummy, and angry President Trump cancels his historic summit with Kim Jong-un. North Korea issues a mea culpa of sorts. Trump says the summit may be back on. Trump says, and here we go again, Obama planted the spy in his campaign. Top congressional Republicans and Democrats meet with the DOJ and the FBI and learn, surprise, that's not true. Joining us for more are Sarasota's newly minted mayor, Liz Alpert, Nick Altier, and Frank Patty of the Sarasota Republican Party, and Mitch Perry of WMNF Radio. I say it in jest, but it almost seems like a new episode every week. And it's been fascinating this week with the issue of North Korea. And Liz, let me start with you. Because now it appears the summit may be back on. I would imagine most Americans, Democrat and Republican, would be supportive of the possibility of an agreement with North Korea. But what do you make of the give and take of the last week?
Well, it's just sort of the pattern that we've been seeing, that it's totally unpredictable. And I think you're right. I think most Democrats and Republicans would love to see some sort of an agreement where the Korean Peninsula was denuclearized. I don't know if that would happen, but even if you had just sort of an embargo and a truce on the nuclear weapons, I think that would be helpful and make all of us rest easier.
I have a question to the two Republicans who are here tonight. Nick, and I'll start with you, because it appears that the president wants this summit very much. Mm-hmm. On the other hand, it looks like his new national security advisor, John Bolton, by making a reference to what happened in Libya, and the vice president did the same thing, resulted in North Korea basically stepping back and with that rhetoric calling the vice president a political dummy. So it seems counterproductive to what the president's intent was in the first place.
I think you might be seeing a little bit of good cop, bad cop there, but I think he's positioning himself correctly. I mean, Kim Jong-un is a very volatile personality, as you know. There's been horrific stories that we've all heard about him, and I can only understand his position as far as meeting with him and under the right circumstances as to not waste his time or Kim Jong-un's time.
But the question is, did John Bolton in particular try to basically undercut what the president wants? Because John Bolton for many years has talked about unilateral action against North Korea.
I don't believe so, but I'm not in President Trump's position, so I can't speak to that.
And Frank, it was described in the story that we saw by CNN there that it's almost a game of a chicken, because you have two leaders here, Trump and the North Korean leader, who both want this summit badly, and it's almost who's going to back out first.
You have to understand, it's posturing. This is North Korea. Remember when they sat at the table in Panmunjom and they back and forth over the chairs and all the rest? This is where it goes. That wasn't just about calling the vice president a dummy. They also were talking about threatening nuclear again. So once they went there, the president said, great, we won't do it.
So Mitch, usually when you have these kind of summits, it's after both sides make a deal and the leaders basically come in and basically put their stamp of approval on it. It doesn't seem like we are anywhere near that.
No, because the Trump foreign policy is very different than we've had in previous presidents. Now, what is similar, though, is ultimately Barack Obama, Bill Clinton, George W. Bush all had trouble negotiating with North Korea, right? This has been ongoing now with their acceleration of their nuclear program for 2 decades now. But President Trump was going to be different, right? I mean, he absolutely really wants a deal. Perhaps he wants it too much. So I think it's a way healthy that we've kind of pushed back or come back a little bit here to look at this. I also think North Korea wants something out of this. We keep on hearing about denuclearization, which is absolutely the goal from the West, but I think North Korea would like maybe for U.S. troops maybe to pull out of South Korea, or do, they want to trade here. I don't think that's really been happening so far. It's been kind of one-sided in the discussions. So this is harder than we thought it would be when Trump was going to get the Nobel Prize a couple weeks ago.
Right, absolutely. We are just getting warmed up, and we'll have much more on the week in Washington right after we check the first alert weather, so stay with us. Welcome back. We are talking about the week in politics, and joining us for more are Sarasota's newly minted mayor, Liz Alpert, Nick Altier and Frank Patti of the Sarasota Republican Party, and Mitch Perry of WMNF Radio. We're going to do a little bit of a U-turn here because there's some major breaking state news. Publix is announcing that it will suspend all political donations. As we know, this came about this week because of boycotts against Publix that you may have seen in the paper and from your friends on Facebook over the NRA's huge support of Adam Putnam, who's running for governor. He's the agricultural commissioner, and he described himself at one point as a proud NRA sellout. Liz, your reaction?
Well, I think that I'm kind of really surprised, but I think the kids from Parkland High School who are on Twitter all the time have just dominated social media, and they've really had an effect. And the fact that Publix would do something like that shows the power of what they're doing. I understand this was just right ahead of a proposed die-in that the students were going to do at the Publix.
Mitch, I don't know if it was on your Facebook feed, but I've seen people all over the place, you know, saying there were alternative places. This really exploded.
Absolutely. You know, the perception among some last week was, let's say you were surprised. A lot of people they were saying, they were poo-pooing it, basically saying, you know, Publix is an institution in Florida and everybody loves it. And yeah, there might be some liberals who are writing on Facebook they're not going to go. But and we still have to see about whether any boycott has really happened yet. But this is a major news that the corporation itself is backing off now, saying, you know, we've given over $670,000 to Adam Putnam, and we're hearing people saying they don't like that. Sure, he's the hometown boy from Lakeland and all that. But I think that what I said last week, I was on another television show, and I said, let's give it a few months. You know, it's one thing for people to say, you know, in terms of a boycott, let's look at how Winn-Dixie does in terms of their market share and some of the other Florida, you know, Whole Foods that some of these liberals are saying they're going to go, you know, go shop at. It's too early, I think, still to tell about if they're going to be affected by the bottom line. But obviously, they're concerned enough already. You mentioned social media and the Parkland kids. Absolutely, they've been kind of the instigators where they say people will actually take a lot of notice for. But I think it's an interesting development because the conventional wisdom simply was this won't go anywhere, and that's absolutely not the case at this point.
You know, Frank, I know you're a big fan of Adam Putnam, but he has been getting a lot of negative headlines recently, including today, an editorial in the Tampa Bay Times, and let me just read the first paragraph. Send out an Amber Alert for Adam Putnam, the red-haired, affable fellow who has served capably as a state legislator, member of Congress, and agricultural commissioner, is missing. In his place is a far-right caricature of himself, branded as a proud NRA sellout, triggered a boycott of Publix, mocked the value of higher education, divided voters between caring families and liberal elites, and scheduled a fundraiser with a man who was videotaped shooting 2 pet huskies.
I think it's an exaggeration to a very good degree. He is not far right. I know Adam. Number one, yes, he is an NRA. He's a country boy. Okay.
A sellout.
Yeah. No, it's not a sellout.
He called himself an NRA sellout.
Yeah. Point is, I think that was a bad statement. He's not a sellout. Adam is very capable. He's smart. He can run the state very easily. He's probably an excellent choice for governor. I'm not taking sides on it. I can't as secretary of the Republican Party. You know, DeSantis is also running with it too. I think in the case of the Publix, my advice to most businesses, don't put up a sign who you're voting for and don't get into that. You're going to lose half your people.
Many corporations who give a lot of political donations. Publix has been under a lot of criticism because primarily or mostly they give their political contributions to Republicans.
Yeah, that's right. And the other ones, so many of them give it to the Democrats, and they don't come out with it because the newspapers won't write about it.
They've contributed $500,000 over the past 10 years to the Democratic Party, and that's just to the Democratic Party. That doesn't necessarily mean each individual candidate. So they're participating on both sides. And to that degree, being an NRA sellout, just because you're a supporter of the NRA, doesn't necessarily put you in the position that you're a pro-gun violence person. I mean, you can support the Second Amendment, the right to defend yourself. That defends the freedom of speech, our First Amendment. And you could be a good person. You don't have to be demonized just because you happen to support the Constitution.
Liz?
Well, I think, you know, most corporations do support usually both both sides. You know, they kind of hedge their bets and make sure that they give some to the Republicans and give some to the Democrats. But I think in this case, since he was, you know, from the area and the contributions were over a long period of time, you know, they have been big supporters of him, and I think that the students from Parkland, and rightfully so, are very passionate about this issue. You know, they saw their friends being shot, and you can't really take that away from them, that if it happened to you, you know, you might think very differently and say, I have to do something about this.
No, I would say, you know, it's been a bad week for Adam Putnam, as you mentioned, Alan. He had to cancel this fundraiser yesterday because this report in the Tampa Bay Times about this you know, the guy who's going to head the fundraiser who shot these dogs, and it was terrible. And that's not on Adam Putnam, but, you know, he had to cancel it. I think that the NRA sellout quote is really coming back to haunt him because, yeah, Parkland has changed the politics to some extent in Florida in terms of gun right. I mean, even Rick Scott passed a law that the NRA didn't approve of. Democrats are running on gun control issues the first time in the 2 decades I've lived here. So the dynamic is a little different now from Putnam than what he thought it was going to be a year ago.
Not only that, but you even had a real conservative around here, our own Joe Gruters, who basically broke down in tears at the Tiger Bay Club, saying that the NRA labeled him a failure because he voted for the gun control law that was passed by the legislature, Nick.
You can pass gun control, and we should pass it when it's reasonable. Okay. To say that we're going to collect all the guns or pick up the guns or ban them is an impossibility.
Nobody's saying that.
Yeah, but
nobody's
the point
saying
is that what you have to go on, the guns are going to be there. There's what, 300 million guns,
Yeah, you're
or
not
some
getting
number?
rid of them.
You're not getting rid of them.
Let me raise one issue because we're running out of time here, and that is the Spygate, as the president described it, accusing that President Obama of inserting a spy into his presidential campaign. You know, those meetings were held with the Gang of Eight on Capitol Hill yesterday, and lo and behold, Mitch McConnell comes out and says he didn't see anything out of the ordinary here. Frank?
Yeah, I take that with a grain of salt. What was
Mitch McConnell, the Republican leader
I
of
don't
the
care
Senate?
who it is. I don't agree with him. Number one, you had somebody questioning these people without saying he was from the government or the FBI. Now, it may not have been Obama, but they have to find out what happened there. It would be a terrible disgrace if someone was put in either party to do spying, and that is spying if someone's doing that. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I mean, what they were doing is what they're supposed to do as the FBI and the CIA, that if they hear, you know, if they get reports that there are foreign agents, they're supposed to check that out. That's what they do.
It prides itself on secrecy. How can you expect it to be honest and open? It is an organization that does not reveal what they're doing, what their agenda is. So for anyone to sit there and draw a conclusion is kind of coming short. The only way to really handle this is open up an investigation on the FBI and any other, you know, party that was a part of the wrongdoing or suspected of. They're investigating Trump on a daily basis right now, and Trump should be allowed to investigate the FBI if he feels there's wrongdoing, if there's plausible evidence.
Let me answer over here.
Hold on a second. Let me just give Mitch a chance to weigh in.
Yeah,
on this.
I'm kind of watching it all, you know, like sitting back and seeing it all. I mean, I see where the Republicans are really fired up about this issue, about this so-called spy, and I do agree. I mean, let's find out more about it. I don't know. I mean, I know that what I think is the big thing, Rudy Giuliani came up this week and said that Bob Mueller was going to have a report by September 1st, which I think we need to have something by September 1st or then after the election. I think everybody might agree on that because this could affect the election.
All right, hold on just 1 second. We have to take a quick break, and we'll be back for final thoughts in a moment. And our guest joining us right now for final thoughts. And let's talk a little bit about the U.S. Senate race. Governor Rick Scott against Bill Nelson. In the last 5 weeks, and we're talking about, we are in May, the governor has spent $8.7 million on television advertising. Bill Nelson is not even up on television yet. Nick, you know, I know you're probably a supporter of the governor here, but what do you make of this?
I think historically it's been asinine the amount of money that's contributed to any political campaign, Democrat and Republican alike. That being said, I'm a supporter of Rick Scott, yes. I think he's going to go and he's going to do exactly what he did in Florida. He's going to lower taxes, he's going to bring jobs, and I think he'll be very successful. In fact, he was the one who put in place that bill you mentioned earlier. That was a bipartisan bill for safety for students, and I believe that when he gets to office, he'll probably continue on that line.
Mitch, where in the world is Bill Nelson?
Yeah, good question. A lot of Democrats are asking that these days. People are worried, actually, Democrats are. They really think that Bill Nelson might be in some trouble. They knew they could never compete financially with Rick Scott. I do believe that the Democratic Senate campaign is going to put some money in this week, actually, to put some ads up for Nelson, because, yeah, he's getting killed on television right now, where they're showing people said they voted for Nelson, but they think he's too partisan these days. It may have some effect. A long time to go, though, obviously, so, stay tuned.
Liz, how concerned are you?
Well, I am concerned because he's never going to have as much money as Rick Scott. And I think that's why we're not seeing him on TV a lot. I've seen a little bit now lately, but he's got to hold off to make sure he's got money to spend at the end. So, that's the issue.
Frank, are we starting these political ads way too early?
That's got to be up to the person who's running it. I wouldn't want to see any regulation when they can start. However, one of the ads should say what Nelson voted for, such as that cockamamie agreement, with Iran. He voted okay. He was not voted, excuse me, because it never got to Congress. Right. But he was all for it. ACA, he was all for it. Well, everything that Republicans and a lot of people are against, especially if we got ACA now, with the rates going through the ceiling.
All right, we have to leave it there. Boy, I wish we really could continue on, but thank you, everyone. Before we go, we want to share with you what some of you had to say about last night's show on the GOP tax plan. Last year, President Trump promised the American working class a big, beautiful Christmas present in the form of a tax cut. He claimed to save the middle class around $2,000 a year, but how many of you have noticed an increase in your paychecks? Anyone? Anyone? We went to Facebook for your thoughts, and Joni says a whopping $42 a month. Adam says not even a tank of gas. But George says, hell yes, I have, and I'm very happy. I'm getting an extra $50 every 2 weeks. I'm sorry, but if anyone complains about getting an extra money and you didn't have before, you need to check yourself into a psych ward. My family appreciates it. And Joni responds, sorry, do I come across as ungrateful? I think the tax plan was peddled as a much bigger boon for the average Joe. Well, if you'd like to join the conversation on tonight's topic, just visit your Facebook page at facebook.com, at mysuncoast.com.abc7. And FYI, you can watch past discussions on demand. They're available on Apple TV, Amazon Fire, and Roku. We want to thank all our guests for being here tonight. Liz Alpert is the mayor of Sarasota. Nick Altier and Frank Patty are with the Sarasota Republican Party, and Mitch Perry is with WMNF Radio.